When someone says the words rally car, for many people one of the first names that comes to mind will be Lancia, and while they have had many successful cars racing the sport, there are likely none as truly iconic as the Stratos. But how did such a revolutionary car come to fruition? Well, let's have a look. Lancia had started to accumulate a number of accolades in rally sport in the 1960s with the Fulvia. The unconventionally V4 powered Fulvia, under the watchful eye of Cesare Fiorio, won the Italian Rally Championship every year in a row from 1965 to 1973, with the exception of 1970, not to mention a number of other wins in other international rallies. In fact, the Fulvia would outright win the International Championship for Manufacturers in 1972, effectively the direct predecessor to the World Rally Championship. However, it was clear to Lancia's owners, Fiat, that by the early 1970s, the family car-based rally machine with a tiny V4 engine was not going to remain competitive for much longer. Coincidentally, at the same time, the design house Bertone were looking for a potential partnership with Lancia. Lancia had traditionally worked with Pininfarina for their designs, so Bertone was going to have to create something very special to win Lancia over. And so they took the running gear from a Fulvia, and a designer at Bertone, you may have heard of him, Marcello Gandini, would design a body to go on top of it. Gandini, who had previously penned a beautiful Lamborghini Miura and was at the time working on its successor, the Countach, clearly took a bit of inspiration from the two cars, as the Stratos Zero, as the first concept was called, could have easily have been a Lamborghini as much as it was a Lancia. Bertone would present the concept himself at the gates of the Lancia factory to great applause from the workers, and he and Lancia would agree to work on a next generation rally car together. Cesare Fiorio, who headed up the Fulvia Rally project, took the reins of this project too, which stuck with the name of the concept going forward as the Lancia Stratos. He asked that a number of conditions had to be met with the Stratos: a short wheelbase with rear-wheel drive, a powerful mid-mounted engine, and a design that would be at home on any surface that would be thrown at it. What was much more notable, however, was that the Stratos was the first rally homologation to be designed and built from the ground up. This was even more impressive considering that, to be homologated into Group 4, the class under which the WRC was contested, 500 road-going units would have to be built. A number of engines were tested: the Lancia Fulvia's V4, the Lancia Flavia's Boxer engine, the smaller Lancia Beta engine, and even a V6 from the Fiat 130. However, it would instead be the V6 from the Ferrari Dino 246 that was chosen. Enzo Ferrari himself was initially reluctant to provide Lancia with the engines, but as the Dino ended production in 1974 and the engine was also being phased out, he eventually gave the go-ahead, and Lancia was provided with the 2.4 litre V6s to put in their cars. The mechanical aspects of the car were designed by legendary engineer Nicola Materazzi, who went on to develop supercars like the Ferrari F40 and the Bugatti EB110. Lancia first presented the Stratos at the 1971 Turin Motor Show, a very distinct design that certainly turned heads. Most notable was the wraparound windscreen, which provided maximum forward visibility, said to mimic a racing helmet. Rear visibility was not quite as impressive. Other parts of the car were meticulously designed like this too. The front and rear boots of the car were both made out of a single lightweight shell which incorporated the mudguards. Not only did they allow for quick and easy access to the engine and other important components, but they also allowed for minimal overhangs, which complemented the incredibly short wheelbase of just 2.2 metres. McPherson struts were fitted at the rear, and the cockpit may have been cramped but purposeful, featuring the iconic helmet storage bins in the door sills. The Stratos was put through its paces in a number of different events throughout 1972 and 1973, and it would see its maiden win at the 1973 Spanish Firestone Rally in the hands of Italian driver Sandro Manari. With some initial teething troubles ironed out, the Stratos was ready to race. The majority of the car was built by Bertone in Turin, and final assembly and preparation took place at Lancia's factory. The car would see 188 brake horsepower in its road-going trim, or the HF Stradale, but rally spec versions would see power be increased to 275. Supposedly, only 492 of the 500 required units were constructed. However, the Stratos was homologated in October of 1974, though this was partway through the World Championship. This was only the second year of the championship, and after Alpine Renault had won it in 1973, Lancia intended to leave a mark on the newly inaugurated competition. And with the Fulvia picking up a few points for the team in the early rounds, the Stratos would finally debut at and win the fourth round, San Remo, also picking up wins in the Rideau Lakes and at the Tour de Corse. And despite not racing the first three rounds, the Stratos would accumulate enough points to give Lancia the title, again at the hands of Sandro Manari. Lancia would go on to replicate this success with a 4-win championship victory in 1975 and another 4-win championship victory in 1976, the latter seeing Lancia with double the points of second place. And it's clear to see how the Stratos achieved this. With its short wheelbase, it was nimble, with its bodywork, it was light, and with the Ferrari engine, it was powerful, and with the pop-up headlights, it was cool. And sure, it had problems with reliability, but come on, it's a Lancia, it's in the name. Essentially, the Stratos became unbeatable. It won the historic and sought-after Monte Carlo Rally 3 years in a row between 1975 and 1977, and it even allowed Manari to win the very first championship for drivers in 1977. With a 24-valve version also later introduced, bringing power up to 320, the Stratos certainly had a long career of rallying success ahead of it. Or so everyone thought. Lancia was still owned by Fiat, and Fiat also wanted their own slice of the rally pie, this time with their name on it. They began developing the 131R Barth, hence taking away large amounts of support for the Stratos. The 131 would go on to be arguably as successful as the Stratos, winning the championship in 1977, 1978 and 1980. However, even without Fiat support, the Stratos still remained as competitive as ever, even when 24-valve engines were banned in Group 4 in 1978, reducing the car's power. In its later rallying years, the Stratos was designated as Fiat's crown winner in the European Rally Championship, which it won in 1976, 1977 and 1978. The Stratos' final WRC victory came almost 7 whole years after it was homologated at the 1981 Tour de Corse, with the car taking an incredible 18 WRC victories in its career. It would also remain popular through privateer entries, in the hands of drivers such as Bernard Darniche. The car even saw life outside of rallying, most notably as a Group 5 silhouette racer, designed and built in 1975 for endurance racing, featuring new bodywork, a turbocharger, and power now sitting at 560 horsepower. They weren't as dominant as their WRC counterparts, especially considering the competition with the likes of the Porsche 935, but it did see some success, such as 3 wins at the Giro d'Italia Automobilistico in 1974, 76 and 78, and 5 wins at the Tour de France Automobile in 1973, 75, 77, 79 and 1980. It even managed 20th at the 1976 24 Hours of Le Mans. It also saw success in Group 5 Rallycross, with Franz Wurz winning the inaugural European Rallycross Championship with it in 1976. The car was even modified in 1977 to increase displacement to 3 litres, the only Stratos to have such an engine. Even with a variety of victories, the Stratos name was eventually retired. While the story would seem to end here, you have likely heard of at least one attempt to bring the name back. Numerous companies have offered kit car replicas, such as the Transformer HF2000, the Lister Bell STR, and most notably, the Hawk HS series, featuring either a Lancia, Alfa Romeo or Ferrari engine, also being notable for, at one point, posting the slowest power lap on the Top Gear test track. However, beyond this, there have been more concrete attempts to modernise the car. In 2000, the car's original designer, Marcello Gandini, produced his own modern interpretation of the Stratos called the Stoller S81. In 2005, British firm Phenomenon, who had acquired the rights to the Stratos name, would unveil their own modern interpretation of the car, designed by Chris Hrabalek. The car featured a mid-mounted 3.6 litre V8 producing 419 horsepower from the Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale. However, despite a planned 50 cars built per year, the project was held off indefinitely, until a man by the name of Michael Stozek would pick up the project, and ironically commission Pininfarina to design a final version of this new Stratos. It would use the Ferrari 430 Scuderia as a donor car, primarily the chassis, which was considerably shortened, as well as the 540 horsepower 4.3 litre V8 found in the 430. Despite the shortened chassis, the new Stratos was larger than the original, and faster too, thanks in no small part to the V8 power plant. While getting the project off the ground was still a difficult task, as Ferrari themselves did not consent to the project, eventually just 8 units of the new Stratos were built in 2019. Man, they do produce some sick cars, but Ferrari can be a bunch of arseholes, can't they? And there it is, the Lancia Stratos, undeniably one of the most iconic cars not only in rallying but in general. The combined efforts of Lancia and Baton, as well as numerous talented individuals, created a car that could tackle just about anything, even in the hands of a mere privateer. And despite the 50th anniversary of the Stratos' maiden win fast approaching, the car still manages to remain a true icon to this day. Until it breaks down, which is inevitable, let's face it, it's a Lancia. Thank you very much for watching, with a very special thanks to Ben Wright and Brum Brum Bryn, who are very generously donating at the highest tier on my Patreon. Just £1 a month is an amazing help, and I also have socials, links to them are in the description below. Again, thank you for watching, and take care.